Hey everyone. So I only got 45 minutes. I want to begin by saying how deeply appreciative I am of the opportunity to share the keynote today. I'm well aware that I'm in a room with a bunch of keynoters, folks who are esteemed in their own right in many different ways. And so the opportunity to share some words with you is one that I don't take for granted or take lightly. I'm deeply, deeply humbled by the invitation. A particular shout out to Dr. Howard, Dr. Ball, Dr. Ferguson, these are OGs in the game to me. And so, not real talk. I mean, I appreciate a lot of y'all too, but those you know what I mean? These are my OGs in many ways. So this is dope. With that being said, I'm gonna give my talk. And my talk is gonna carry my vibe and who I am in many ways, right? I want to share information, excite the imagination, but I also want to challenge and provoke. And if I didn't challenge and provoke as concurrently as doing the other, then I wouldn't have done the job of keynoting, right? So with that, I'm asking you to indulge me if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel pushed and pressed. The intention is not about making you feel some kind of way. It's about challenging us to think differently. Is that all right? Yes. And when I say that to you, also know I'm always saying this back to myself, right? I always go through the process of sort of the metacognitive, thinking about what I'm thinking about what I'm saying, and in the moment, I'm saying things to folks that I'm saying to myself. So it's not about an indictment. It's about just thinking through publicly. That's all this is. And with that being said, there was a quote, man, by Toni Morrison that it didn't make the slides. They had to set the slides in early. You know how that goes?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I know. But I would have opened up with this, and Toni Morrison says, I tell my students, when you get these jobs that you've been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. And I'm under the assumption that's the goal of this thing, but individually, I want us to consider that, right? Question number one is, she didn't say, because you're free somebody else. She asked if you're free. And then the beginning point is for us to collectively recognize whether or not we have a full freedom in this landscape of education that we're considering. Are we moving and operating in a way where we have the flexibility and the leveraging power and the movement to be our authentic selves as we do the work? Or are we doing the equity work for young folks of color, taking on traditions of how it's been done? And that's a challenging thing because in many ways, our ability to adopt norms of systems of power allow us to be able to infiltrate systems to get work done. Yep. But fam, you here now. and so if that is the case, there has to be an untethering. Not only in the work you're doing, but I would argue the most important and significant way is in the how it's being done. When we come up with research about how to improve educational practices, it's not to say that some of that research isn't phenomenal, but you put good research in the minds and hearts of folks who have not understood their own freedom yet, they will your research. Because what happens is they're thinking through what the work is more than intuitively doing it. And here I'm gonna say some provocative stuff. I think folks of color in particular have historically always moved in a way where they're guided more than by their intuition than by the documentation. Now, we, as we align ourselves to systems of power and established norms, will always trade in our intuition for the structure, which is why we've heard 4 jokes today. I took notes about, we ain't been on time yet, but we're gonna get through this anyway, or we're off by a little bit, but we're doing really well. Even when we've been off, we've said we are off, but not off. Y'all with me? And what I'm saying to you is this: what if we started framing our discourse around the fact that we are off schedule as an element of our gift? The fact that we view the off-scheduleness, this is just an exemplar, but the fact that we view the off-scheduledness as a deficit to our collective meeting signals our shared alignment to a philosophy of engagement that is separate from our ways of knowing and being. And once we start recognizing that all of our practices are guided by norms that run counter to our intuitive knowledge, then the beginning happens. Like, it's that point that the opening happens. Y'all with me? Now, that opening, the work I did with the young folks in that video, all that stuff, freedom is the freedom to recognize that I can operate with hybridity, with a merging of multiple sensibilities in each of these spaces, and even privileging some of those things that are non-traditional. So for me, my Bronxness, my hoodness, that identity, I lead with. So that's the premier piece of, I got PhD, all that, like, I got all that stuff, right? But all that stuff, everybody else has. When I go into academic spaces and I'm at a meeting with folks, everybody, you throw a quarter, you hit somebody with a PhD. So everybody has one, right? So if that's the case and everybody has one in this space, what is it that I have to offer that signals my freedom? What is it I have to offer that signals my departure from the norms? If I cannot identify that thing and lead with that thing, then you're just one like the other ones. And sometimes it requires delving deeply into a piece of yourself that you've forgotten. Calling forth a piece of yourself that was what signaled that you were failing. Are y'all with me or not? You know, when my cousin came up, like cousins for real, when my cousin came up earlier this morning and had on the salmon blazer, his salmon is a little bit, it stayed in the frying pan a little longer, so mine is light. But he was given a traditional talk. Then there was a quick departure. There was a quick departure where the emotion of having all of you guys here hit him in the heart. And as he began to do that, Matthew and I joked earlier, like, he went to full preacher mode, was what Matthew said to me. Like, there was a moment, and then there was a return. The moment, I would argue, is the central point. Right? That's when somebody here said, amen. Somebody here said, preach, brother. And then y'all were like, oh, shit, we on the Vineyard. Easy. Like, so. But we had some insight into it. Then we had some insight into it. And here's what I want to argue for. I want to argue for us being deliberate and intentional by identifying these things, these sort of interstitial spaces of freedom. And being intentional about that being who we are when we're talking about this work. But most importantly, recognizing that that could be the anchor point for the instruction for young people. Like, all that video showed, like, all for me was I would go in there and try to teach science. My story to science, to education is I'm an anthropobiochemist by training. I got a master's in natural, like, I have the science credentials. And then I said, you know what? I want to go back and make more scientists. Is there any better mission, vision, or story than that? The kid from the hood turned scientist who wants to go make science educators. You like that story, don't you? Yeah. So now I go in to teach science educators. I want to use myself as the exemplar. And I go to teach science, these kids science, and what I get back immediately was kids who were like, nah, I want to learn that from you. And I'm like, but wait, I'm black like you are, and I love you. Right? You know, I've read books on equity and social justice. I'm here to do the right thing. And they're like, nah, it's not there, right? So my intention is on point. The spirit that which is driving me to the work is right. But my execution is problematic because I failed to recognize that I am, despite my intention, my leveraging point, my entry point is one that is foreign to the young folks. Y'all with me? I would see them, they're bored. Then I looked out the window one day and they were writing rhymes on the corner. They were spitting bars in the corner. And I'm watching these kids rap and I see joy, excitement. Somebody has a crazy dope bar, collective effervescence, if you want to use a Durkheimian term. Like, I saw all this joy, power, passion. They're memorizing each other's lyrics, all these things. And I'm like, yo, why can't I have that in my classroom? Because I know, and we all know, that the signal for active learning is creating the context for freedom. The reason all these other young folks do well in schools is because their ways of knowing and being at home, this is not new research, y'all. Tyrone been writing about this forever. Their ways of knowing and being in their home environments are different from the ways of knowing and being that are required in schools. And so when I get into the school and it's foreign, then the underperformance begins. And for other kids, it's all aligned, right? But we cannot use respectability as a linchpin for our pedagogy that inhibits us from doing the kind of work we need to get young folks free. I'm telling y'all. You want to get kids in the hood to learn better, let them be them. And let the folks who are next door say, why are your kids so loud? And say, because we loud. Right, and that our loudness is not a deficiency. In fact, I would argue that our loudness is part of it's part of the skill set I've developed to survive where I came from. If everybody in the hood is loud, music is blasting, I learned to elevate my voice just to be heard. Then I go into a school where I'm saying, don't be heard. Or be heard only when you divorce yourself from all the things that gave you capital in the local space outside of the school. Y'all with me? Now, for me, my ed tech folks, my superintendent folks, are we willing to trade in our position for the interests of young folks in a way that looks radically different from the way it looks right now? I mean, that's the question. Like, I can tell you about strategies. I done wrote a book with strategies, my 7 C's, all that. It's really about what are you willing to let go of that stops you from being free? And when they're looking at you and they, young folks, you talk about vibration, they feel this is why this work is so heavy for me, right? Because, ain't no rubric for freedom. There's no benchmark for it. It's hard to quantify. I know we have folks who like to quantify stuff, and I argue that it's essential for some domains of things. But I'm telling you that good teaching, good classrooms, good programs isn't about the outcomes per se. We want the outcomes to be right. It's about the feel. And you feel it. I don't know how to, right? You're like, like, you ever hear Whitney Houston when she hit the high note at the national anthem and the hair stood up right here? Who knows what I'm talking about? Now, if I'm looking at you, I can't know that these are here. But you feel it. And good teaching is feeling. Now, how do you know if the feeling is having an impact on young folks? By asking them how you feel. Y'all with me still? So that all leads me into my opening slide. Right? on hip-hop ed and this approach to pedagogy. Right? And I want to make a connection to this again to the layers of salmon blazering, like the Pentecostal pedagogy. Can y'all go here? Right? The significance of a Pentecostal pedagogy, which draws from a tradition that's outside of anything, and no shade to the Vygotskis and the Piagets and the Dewey. I had to read all that stuff. I understand it. I recognize it. I use them. I cite them. Sometimes it helps me. But I would argue that I learn more about witnessing, teaching, and learning in local spaces with folks without credentials than I do about the stuff I read. When a preacher gets to going with that Pentecostal pedagogy, so can I get an amen? How y'all know to do the amen? You know it, you feel it, right? And the invoking of the, dare I say, spirit, which we don't ascribe to in contemporary education, because again, you can't quantify it, but that it's a thing. I don't care what nobody say. Y'all can have me back or not. Black folks, I'd like to come back though, but you know what I mean? But. No. I go back to the room, the key don't work. I'm like, but y'all, real talk, y'all. Black folks would not be here today if folks before you did not tap into a certain hope, vision, divine belief that allowed them to overcome the obstacles they did. Don't nobody go through slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow. Nobody goes through all that and still makes it out without belief in something bigger than what's on paper. And what I'm saying is that a Pentecostal pedagogy is necessary for improving education. And a connection to something divine and bigger than you is necessary for education. And young folks never get that. Learn this so you can learn it. Learn it so you can be successful when you get to college. Nobody says, learn this because you are your ancestors' dreams, and they're walking and living through you, and that, through a call and response a la Pentecostal pedagogy, will be the anchor of our instruction, like a call and response invoking of the Spirit. And young folks respond to that, y'all. How you think Khaled gets 100,000 people to get their hands to go up, and they stay there? Up, down, up, down, up, down. in any other context, that would be corporal punishment. Because like, no, genuinely, wouldn't it? It would be. In any other context. But he, although not from that tradition, understands the power of a Pentecostal pedagogy and utilizes that as an anchor of his mode of delivery of information to people. Just consider that. You know what I'm saying? Yo, Khaled, I don't know how I got to Khaled, but Khaled be like, yo, they don't want us to get another Bentley. So we gonna get another Bentley. They don't want us to win, but we gonna win. And guess what? Khaled Snapchats himself in a brand new Bentley afterwards, and everybody's like, we got a new Bentley. And I'm like, bruh, you don't have a new Bentley. But he's invoked something in a sensibility. He's invoked something in the imagination, right? And here's the thing. I believe that can be quantified, identified. It feels like magic and be taught to teachers. And that's the fundamental beginning of transforming education. And that everything else, I'm not saying everything else is trash. I'm thinking, goods, listen, you can't, if you pour wine into a vessel with a hole in it, it's not about the quality of the wine that the vessel gets emptied. It's because you've not patched up the hole. So we're creating amazing wine. Like, I'm hearing about some of these companies, I'm like, Lord, like I want to meet Amelia in person from the joint. Like, it's powerful. It's beautiful. It looks like us. It feels like all that stuff is amazing. What I'm saying to you is you put, as amazing as Amelia is, into the hands of a teacher who is lost, or into the hands of a teacher who might be found with young folks who have not invoked the connection to it. No spirit in that space. And that powerful tool will be useless. And here's what we oftentimes do. Then we like, oh, the tool was trash. No, the tool was never trash. Your tool is amazing. I done heard y'all. Your tool is amazing. Like, the things we're constructing are amazing. But if you cannot do what Dr. Ball talking about with that pedagogical piece concurrently with it, we lost. And I had to check myself today sitting back there, because I'm sitting here, you know, I sat in the back, and as I thought about my work and what I'm doing, and we do Science Genius, where we have young folks write raps about science, right? But then they go and battle each other, right? And then we have a rubric for assessment, and literally we invite battle rappers to come judge the kids on the quality of their raps about science. Then the battle rappers learn more science, and the kids are in awe because they're there looking at, and then they, you know, like we do this. But as I do all those things, I had to think of myself. I said, yo, Chris, yeah, that work is nice and it's cute, but what are you doing wrong, right? And as I watch you guys present, when I saw the OG with, he the OG, fam. Like, I'm still like, you know what I mean? But, you know, but the OG partnered up with a young dude who's doing some dope ed tech stuff, right? And then partnered up with the sister who's making the connections happen. And as I'm sitting there watching this, I'm saying, oh, that's me. The reason why my work hasn't gotten to where it's supposed to go is also me not talking about freedom to folks, but not feeling free myself. Wow. Right? Because I'm like, them cats with the bread. I mean, can we talk? That's the purpose of a keynote, to like really have honest, I'm like, them cats with the bread. Like, they ain't really about that life. They just out there, like, you know, so educators, theorists, researchers, I'm looking at y'all from the back of the room. I came in here like, oh, you know, like, here they go with the whatevers, right? And being honest, right? And so I'm gonna hear what they have to say, whatever else it is. But then I'm looking at, wait, just the same way I'm challenging you folks to step out of your comfort zone, to imagine this work with a more freeing viewpoint, to make more strong and powerful connections, it's the same way I'm sitting there like, oh, nah, we just mad woke. We're not with them. And so listen, y'all, in both instances, there are signals that you ain't free and I ain't free. Because I'm not free enough to advocate fully for the work and what I believe in to you. And you're not full enough to recognize the fact that them folks might have something to say, and we should take the step to be able to incorporate this in our work. And unless we get free to be and build and connect, what is the purpose of all this? So hip-hop ed to me is an exemplar of how I went through this. Like, my passion for hip-hop, my viewing of hip-hop as a powerful tool for young folks, this is the big part. My suspension about my biases about hip-hop and folks' perceptions about that phenomenon, this is the hard part. Because listen, just like folks have misconceptions about hip-hop, they have misconceptions about loud black folks. right? Which is why we police ourselves. For young folks and us, we always defer to folks who we believe that their position equates to their brilliance or their genius. So you go to present to a person who is the gatekeeper, and by virtue of them not understanding the genius of what you have to offer, you start devaluing who you are and what you have to offer. And what I'm saying to you is, this is what Toni Morrison taught me in her work, that I am centering my experience as the most valuable piece of all of this. I'm centering my thoughts. I'm centering my blackness. I'm centering my hoodness. I'm centering my ratchetness. We're gonna go there in a little bit. My ratchetness as the anchor of my work. And when I say ratchetness, I don't mean a ratcheting wrench. I don't mean I don't mean the device, because some of y'all went there first. I'm talking about the almost perceived vulgar expressions of blackness. You know that there's certain expressions of who we are that folks just see it as vulgar just based on the physical representation of it. I don't know if y'all feeling me. Huh? Like, I want to center myself in my ratchetness. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not all ratchet. It's a deliberate, intentional, and political act to draw from my ratchetness as the anchor of this academic self. Because look, my degree got me where I need to go. So now I have to be intentional about finding the ratchetness piece, the most ratchet piece of who I am as the leveraging point for my discourse. Look, everybody, the brilliant social critic Lil Boozy once said, he once said, everybody got a little ratchet in them. So, because some folks now are like, well, I'm a middle class black, not trust me, somebody thinking it. Like I don't have the leveraging point based on my experience. What I'm saying to you is, there's a piece of who we collectively are that has that. And what I'm saying is, when you with your credential, with these good jobs, like Tony says, right, enter into the space of that opening up of that perceived to be vulgar self, guess what you do? You give a passport, a direct passport to everybody else who hasn't quite figured it out yet. Y'all with me? The more you police who you are, the more only singular versions of who you are accepted. And that singular version of who you are is always the minority, because the strongest ones amongst us ain't finished. Everybody in here who been anywhere knows your homie you came up with, or the sister you came up with, who was genius. You're like, man, they know more than me, and that person got lost along the road. And it was supposed to be smart, because at the time, it was the way to go. You learn to police self. You learn to be complicit enough. You need to bend. It's a dance. The sociologists call it the art of the code switch, which I argue is passé. Look, man, listen. Look, let me tell you something, y'all. And I hope it's okay if I go here. Third grader or fourth grader is in the school. No subject-verb agreement. Fail. Can't sit on the line with their shoulder, and I've seen this last week. Can't sit on the line with their shoulder, or won't sit on the line with the shoulder to the wall, suspension. And what I'm saying to you is, we have entered into an era of the absence of respectability. And if the person who they allowed to have the keys to the free world operates in a space where he can be his authentic, non-spelling self, not to talk about the ideological problems, like that's a whole other conversation, but that person can be his full authentic self in articulating what it is he wants to his base. And we're saying here, playing conservative blackness as the anchor to freedom. You are playing a game you're not equipped for if you ain't free enough. And I'm not saying you won't find some success, but you're gonna find success with other folks who look like you, other folks who sound like you, and the folks who need us the most are gonna keep being lost. And I refuse personally, and I can look into your eyes and tell right now that you refuse as well to allow us to be counted out because we're playing their game. Be you, fam. The doors are open for freedom. This is where we are. Now, I say all that to say, as we merge, that we have to recognize that this work requires, and I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Chris Emdin, whatever. And my person was Maxine Green. And Maxine Green, I'll tell y'all a story. How am I on time? 17, okay. Yo, We have all been in spaces where we've seen unpolished, the data's not quite right, the numbers don't add up, versions of ourselves that we dismiss because it ain't polished. I don't think y'all following where I'm going right now. Yo, part of this work is not just supporting each other. Part of this work is taking risks for each other, going to bat, working with someone to figure it out. I talked to a graduate student, graduated from my institution, going to teach in classrooms. What's your teaching philosophy? I'm a believer in innovative practices, social justice, equity for all students, and having them all have the power and possibility to transform the world. Great. Then I go into the classroom. The exact opposite. What I'm saying to you is that the switcheroo is real. Listen, once our words that are revolutionary have become part of the existing discourse, it's time for us to redefine the words or change them completely. Otherwise, they'll be co-opted to meet the needs that are opposite of what we need. Somebody told me once, oh, you do STEM and equity? You could get a grant easy. I said, but they haven't heard what I have to say. I said, it doesn't really matter. Just keep saying STEM and equity. That's where we are now. That's where we are now. And so you gotta recognize, you cannot be manipulated by the use of language and words. And I got a slide around that. Oh, this is back to Maxine's quote. This one right here. It ain't just about, consciousness is not just about, being awake. It's not about just reflection. It's not just about thinking for yourself. It's also about being furious. Gatherings rooted in love should also spark a righteous indignation. If there's no fervor, if you're not moved emotionally to go do something tomorrow, useless, right? We should leave here with a love for each other and a collective furiousness about what's next. And I make the argument that you can teach your teachers to have righteous indignation, and that helps them to be better at their practice. Let me move on. Without order, nothing can exist. Without chaos, nothing can evolve. We've reached an education system where we exist, and we exist well, and it requires our version of what it might be perceived as chaotic. And chaotic is different based on different lenses. One man's chaos is one other man's divine order. You ever go to a black church and a grandmama catch the Holy Ghost? The sermon's supposed to happen when it happened, and she gets to going, she gets to stomping, and you're like, oh my God, it's off. But let the organist start playing solemnly. She knows right away to drop. Am I right? You get her wig back, you put a cloth over her, she gets it together, then you move on.
That's right.
But there's an order. It's an order that actually surpasses the sort of chronotypic nature of how things should go, right? That we have to sort of start investing in. And then I promised the sister, the speech pathologist, I'm gonna go here for a little bit, so I'm gonna go here for you. I want you to watch this clip. Agnosia is a condition where human beings witness phenomena and don't know how to process said information. And this is an exemplar of it. Give me a little volume because the sound's a little low.
Let me give you a hint.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a choice, and you tell me what this is.
Okay, I can tell you then.
Okay. Is this a clock, a lock, or a telephone?
A lock.
Is it a lock?
A clock, a lock, or a telephone? Okay, let's rule out a telephone. What? A clock or a lock? Clock. Gotta be a lock. Must be a lock then.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not. But I don't recognize it as a telephone.
Mm-hmm. Do you recognize it as a lock?
No, honestly, I don't. But it's just it really looks very indescript to me.
Uh-huh. But your hands know what they want to do.
I know,
with
and
it.
they want to do something.
That's right.
I can see them.
Uh-huh.
I can just picture them, and I know
Okay.
that I have. It's like I'm undoing a combination lock.
Good.
Huh.
Okay, good. We had to work on that one, didn't we?
No shit.
That's okay.
I love this clip, right? Because this guy is working through this thing. He can't quite get it. He can't quite grasp it. He has a severe condition, a biological condition that inhibits him from getting where he needs to go. And I would argue that the issue we have as educators collectively here is that we have a cultural agnosia. His inability to recognize the clock, the lock, or the telephone based on some damage to his occipital lobes that inhibits him from being able to process what it is. We have a cultural agnosia that inhibits us from being able to see the genius, the power, and the possibilities of those who are most ratchet amongst us. Listen, there's no model for pedagogy that you're gonna employ that there's not a better version of it existing in the hood. I wish I could. Sometimes the spirit just goes. Ain't nothing you could design, come up with, construct, and think about where the blueprint for it or a better version of it does not already exist within the communities that we think are most damaged. You know, I need us, the tech folks, the superintendents, go and just take a time out and go witness the genius of the hood. I don't think we do, like, you know, we, not in a like, oh my gosh, let's go see how, you know, how radical they are in their own element. Like, not in a voyeuristic kind of like anthropology kind of, like just go walk through the hood, bruh. You know, them kids getting bussed over, and they wanted to get bussed over, my G, and I loved your work and how you described it. Yo, understand the emotion that comes with not having that bus and why they were so separate and opposed to it. And do that with your teachers. And it's, because look, the bus is dope because it gets the outcomes which we need. But the empathy that is developed and constructed out of walking through why they wouldn't come to school to begin with reimagines the way the educators look at those young people. The same young folks are like, oh my gosh, they just don't show up. They lack the resilience. They lack the grit. No shade to Duckworth. Maybe a little, this neither here nor there. We can talk about it later. But, you know, it exists already. ASAP got released the other day, last week. He did his last freestyle. All the kids in the hood know every lyric and ad-lib. I'm trying, y'all follow me or not? Yeah. Like literally, for young folks who we argue as having the inability to be able to read well or process well, et cetera, in their localized ways outside of school, they're showcasing off the charts approaches to this thing. It's because we ain't constructed a model to allow them to be free yet. It's because we're not, okay. Y'all, I got no minutes. 2, 3, go. Thanks. This is schooling. It's cloning. This guy, William Desevitz, I think is his name, wrote this book called Excellent Sheep, where he was talking about graduates of Ivy League institutions who are all excellent, but they're all sheep, in that you look at them all and they're all the exact same versions of it. And what we have is we have a system that creates excellent sheep for those who are not amongst the ones who want to get successful. Like on its own, it's broke. Like for their babies, it's broken. Are y'all with me? They're all sheep to begin with. Now we in our system trying to create clones of excellent sheep. And the cloning process requires 2 cells. One that you identify from the beginning is not good enough to be replicated. It's only gonna carry the genetic material of the one you want cloned. Y'all with me still? So I get these 2. This one I wanna clone, this one is empty. I go into the Excel. What's going on here is an extraction of the genetic material from that cell. The pipette goes in and it takes out all its truth, all its guts, all its knowledge, all its wisdom, all its hoodness, all its ratchetness. It takes that out. Then it takes the foreign DNA and infuses it into the cell so they can now adopt the norms of the other organism. Y'all with me still? Now, when this happens, guess what happens, y'all? What is the natural response of the cloned cell? That's the one that's attempting to be cloned. Rejection. We are still in education in the phase of rejection. Like they're literally, we've not even gotten to the point where we're looking at new possibilities. We're still looking at a system where the kids are just saying, nope, 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 and that results in, I ain't gonna read, I ain't gonna learn, I'm not gonna engage, that's all we're in right now. And what I'm telling you is, even in that phase that we're in now, the cloning of excellent sheep, do you know that only 1 out of 277 of those cloned cells actually survives? And that's us. We are the clones of excellent sheep who survived the process, who are having conversations about how to create equitable schools by replicating the same process that did violence on us. Not you, us. Me too, bruh. And not only that, the first mammal clone, Dolly. You know Dolly's lifespan was half the life of other sheep who were born and raised naturally to be free? You know, she had severe arthritis, severe arthritic problems, And I'm saying this to y'all, us, if we don't get free, it kills us. Not just emotionally and spiritually, I'm talking physically. This shit bothers me, bruh. We have geniuses amongst us who spend their whole entire lives being other than who they are, and it's killing them physically. 45-year-old sister, heart attack. And we're like, what are these manifestations of what happening in the physical are born of our rejection of our spiritual connections. Your health is affected by the fact that you ain't connected to who you are. How are we gonna set young folks free if we can't be free? One. But how are we gonna model freedom if we're not alive to model it? Because you're rejecting the narratives being sent to us from our ancestors. And that's what we do every single day. Look, I'm tired, man. I'm sorry, I'm gonna take 2 more minutes. Like, I'm tired of going to conferences. I'm tired of going to meetups. I'm tired of going to think tanks. I'm tired of getting invited to places with folks who have no consideration of what we're talking about right now. Everybody got a data set. Thanks. Like, we are who we've all been waiting for. And I oftentimes close with this thing, yo. You are somebody's ancestor. 50 years from now, somebody's gonna tell your story. And when they say, oh, he started a great startup. Oh, he's funded some folks. Like, oh, he was a superintendent and it was nice. Or will they say that you set folks free through your work? You are somebody's ancestor. Move, operate, lead accordingly. Thank you. Thank you, bro.